Welcome everyone to Banana Bread Trades. My name is Goose and today we are talking about volume profile, and more specifically how I use volume profile every single day to mark out zones that I potentially want to take a trade in, when I should enter a trade when in those zones, as well as what direction I think the market will be moving out of those zones. I can tell all three of those just by using volume profile. Now, volume profile is not the end all be all, and there are definitely other ways that you can use and trade them as well. I'm just going to go over how I use them every single day. Now, what is volume profile, you may ask? It is simply just the amount of trades that have taken place for a specific time frame that you have chosen. And there's three volume profiles that I like to use. The first one being the monthly volume profile, which is just showing me the amount of trades at each price for the last month. The next one is the daily volume profile, and this is going to be the one that I use to determine what direction I think we'll be going. And then the last one is the 30-minute volume profile. And the way I use it is actually just replacing each 30-minute candlestick with the volume profile for that candlestick. And I will use all three of these volume profiles in conjunction together to help me determine where and when I should be taking my trades. So the first volume profile, and I think the most important one that I use, is the monthly volume profile. And I use it in conjunction with my 1 hour chart, sometimes 4 hour and sometimes daily as well. But the main one I use is my 4 hour chart. It makes the most sense in my brain and I read it very well. So what I will do with this 1 hour chart with my monthly volume profile is I will go look for any obvious, and the keyword here is obvious, zones of consolidation and obvious points of support and resistance. And if I find some really obvious points, as in like there's a wick here, which then turned into a big consolidation, an obvious support and resistance area, I will then look at the volume profile and see if that lines up with any high volume or low volume nodes. And what I mean by that is these areas of really high volume, right? Like right here is the point of control, which means this spot on the volume profile has the most amount of volume traded for this given time frame. Now, these high volume areas are generally known to be really choppy because this is what price wants to gravitate to, right? If it moves away, it wants to move back to that high volume area. So generally, I kind of try to avoid trading in those areas because, as you can see, they are very choppy, right? So since this is the highest volume area, I have it labeled as the point of control chop zone, which means I'm going to be super cautious right here. But then when you get to these smaller high volume nodes, I do expect price to gravitate towards these areas. So these are areas that I want to take trades towards or take trades away from if I think that we have finished consolidating here and we're going to move to the next one. So I will try to line up those obvious points of consolidation and obvious points of support and resistance with these high volume and low volume nodes as well. Because since price likes to chop around and gravitate towards these high volume areas, we would expect that it doesn't want to trade in those really low volume areas. So I would expect price to really try to resist moving into these low volume areas. And if it does move into that low volume area, I would expect it to pass quickly through it because it wants to get to the next area of high volume. So yeah, that's pretty much how I use my 1 hour and monthly volume profile to mark out these areas. And just kind of recap: obvious consolidation zones, super obvious zones of support and resistance. If it lines up with a high volume area or a low volume area, we want to take note of that and be like, okay, we either want to take trades here or we want to make sure that we are taking trades to this zone, but also be aware that this zone may be kind of choppy, so we should stay light so that we are prepared to take wider stops in that, we don't want to get shaken out if we have a really strong bias in one direction or the other. So the next volume profile that we're going to be talking about is the daily volume profile. And this is going to give us a smaller time frame kind of look at what is just going on for that day, because we are day traders, correct? Or even if you are a swing trader, this gives you an idea of how the day is positioning itself. So what I look to look for on the daily volume profile is three pretty distinct shapes. The D profile, which is kind of shown here right now, where we have kind of a nice rounded profile, which is going to show us that the day is pretty balanced. And as you can see, this day was very balanced. There was not a lot of volume put in at the lows. You can see that there's a nice taper there. And what that taper shows is that there's a lack of interest in taking trades as we move lower, which only means if there's a lack of interest in taking trades, the price is going to want to gravitate back to where the trades want to take place at. Same thing with right up here. Lack of interest in taking trades. There was a little bit of volume put up right here at open, right at our opening candle. We had a lot of volume, which got some volume put in right there, but trying to move any further, a lot of lack of interest in trades, which kind of caused us to move lower. And where the majority of our trades were wanting to take place at was right here in the middle of the day, which is where we just kept gravitating to, which made this a really nice range day, right? We stayed within initial balance all day long, and price just kept trying to trade back towards this POC. Now, do we want to take trades at POC? No. This is where we want to take trades towards. So as you gravitate away from POC and you can see that there's a lack of interest in buying or selling, then when you get to a really clear level like initial balance high or initial balance low, you can take a short or a long with confidence that we're going to move back to the POC. So that's how I really like to trade a range day. Now, there are days that obviously do not range, and how do we trade those? Well, we'll move that on to the next slide. I actually have a video saved from the other day where we had a very, very hard trend day, right? So at the beginning of the day, you can see that we put in a lot of volume here at open, and then we flushed straight off of that, right? And we kept flushing and we kept flushing. You watched Delta, there was a lot of selling. And as we kept flushing, we never seemed to really put in a nice taper. It was just very consistent selling and consistent volume all the way down. And when you're not getting a taper and you're just seeing this consistent volume, you want to be very patient until you see something that we like to call a P or a B profile form. A P profile being kind of what we see right here, looks like the letter P except backwards. It is showing that all the volume was in at the high. We're moving away from there. So obviously we've moved from this high volume area and we're trying to find the next volume area to trade in. So when we have a super hard trend day like this, we just kind of have to be patient. Now here you can see we're starting to get a little bit of a nice clear taper with our volume. Is this a reason to take a trade yet? No, because as you can see, volume is still pretty consistent and we're very far away from this POC now. So what we want to see is us establish a new high volume area. And when that new high volume area gets established, we flip a POC down there. Then we can possibly take a trade there, expecting that this high volume area has been established and we will move away from that. That can also be said for what we talked about with our balance days. Let me see if I can pull that one back up. With our balance days, we are kind of just establishing the bottom of one of those P or B profiles. So you can expect that after a heavy range day, that we should be followed with potentially a very nice trend day to the next volume area. Or we could range again in the same area, and the more you range in an area, the more violent the move away from that area will be in search of the next volume area. So let me go back to our video here. And we can kind of start to see this in action. As you can see, we put in a little bit more volume down low, but there's still kind of a nice clear taper going on. that taper still exists. And on the left here, this is actually delta. So this is just showing us the difference of buyers and sellers. This isn't the total volume of buyers and sellers. This is just showing us the difference between the two. So now you can start to see that volume is being established here at the lows. And now we have flipped the point of control down to the low here, establishing that the new volume area has been decided. So on a nice trend day like this, when new volume area gets decided, then we know that there is a little bit of a taper here. We have a nice volume area getting decided. If we are in a trade, it is a fantastic area for us to decide to get out of our short. In this situation, it would be a short. It could be also the opposite of a long, right? The next volume area has been decided. So the trend is now over. So if you were in a trade to that new volume area, you would want to exit that trade. Or if you're on the opposite side, let's say this volume area gets decided, it could be a great place for you to enter a trade because you have a clear taper here. So you know price doesn't want to go lower than here. We have a new volume area decided. We could possibly reverse and go back to the previous volume area, which price tried to do, but ultimately ran out of time that day. So that is kind of what we look for in P and B profiles, as well as our D profile, I guess is what it would be called. That is what we are looking for in both of these situations. We are establishing a big volume area. And if we break out of there, like we break away from that high volume area, get out of that range, then we expect the move to be pretty violent and pretty trendy until we establish a new high volume area. And in that situation, if you are in a trade to that area, you know to exit your trade, or you can use that area to be your entry point to either fade the market or, be your entry point for the move to the next high volume area. And so the last volume profile that I use, and I don't use this one exclusively, and that is the 30-minute volume profile. And how I use this is kind of to time my entries and get a smaller scale gauge of what volume is looking like when we get into my zones of interest. And I can use this in coordination with my daily and monthly volume profile and my longer term levels to kind of get a gauge of, is there interest moving above or below these levels? So what I really want to look for is confirmation of the levels that I have. So as you can see, price is really consolidating in one of these zones that I have marked out. However, as we move upward, you can see the taper that we're talking about, right? A real lack in interest in trades as it tries to move above this zone. But price is trading very heavily in this zone. So we know that this is the spot where, we're going to break out of this zone and trend to the next zone above and below. However, because we have a taper to the upside, and that taper is pretty consistent across all candles, we're going to look to the bottom side of those candles, and you notice that they are a little bit heavier, right? We do not have a taper towards a lot of the downsides of these candles. And that's kind of going to show us that there's a lot of interest at the bottoms of these candles, which is meaning the price kind of wants to move lower. And as you can see here, it does, and it breaks down. However, we move to the zone below, and all of a sudden we start having these really nice clear tapers again, right? You have enough clear tapers, you have enough interest down here, price will move back up again. And in these in-between candles, you really just cannot read too much into them, in my opinion, because these are some really high, fast volume moves. And what we're looking for is just confirmation in the zones that we're looking at trading. And sometimes it's not very clear, right? Like we moved into this zone, doesn't give us a whole lot of really idea moving in here, right? It got pretty gross. And then we moved into our POC zone, and this was that crazy 3% day, right? So there's just not a lot of information we can take from here. But then we move back into our zone. We see a lot of volume taking place back in our zone. We see there's still some volume. You know, it's not a clear taper right here. It kind of wants to move lower. And eventually it does, and we get a super clear taper, right? There's absolutely no interest in moving any lower now. So we can have some confidence that we will move to the upside, which we did. Got a taper to the upside, move back down, super clear taper again, and we trended right back up. So it's all about kind of getting confirmation of one of the zones. You want to see a lot of these candles trading in your zone to confirm that, okay, we're going to move away from this zone eventually. And then you look at the taper of those candles to kind of determine which way you'll be moving. As you can see in this zone, the top of these candles, terrible taper. But towards the bottom of these candles, we have some really nice tapers. That gives us an indication that we kind of want to move higher. And then when you're in between your areas, like I said, I don't look too much into it until we get back into the zone and I look for confirmation in those zones. So this has been my tutorial on how I use volume profile. Like I said, there's many other ways to use volume profile. I encourage you to learn them all. This is simply how I use it and what I've taken away from all the videos of volume profile that I have watched. There's lots of other ways, and lots of other people use it other ways very effectively. Again, I always encourage you to do a lot of your own research and keep learning things. But anyways, that's all I have for today. Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to discuss more, please comment down below. If you got help from this video, comment down below. If you didn't get help from this video and you think I'm an idiot, comment down below. And if you want to discuss really far in detail or even ask other people, feel free to join the Discord. It's linked down below in the comment section or in the description, whatever you want to call it. Lots of smart people in there. We're talking all day. It's free. Come join, come hang out. And again, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.